Well, we welcome all the people back who are watching this on TV. I know that you've been waiting patiently to continue on with this, and we want to welcome the provincial auditor and officials from her office. Ms. Clement, would you please introduce your officials and make your presentation on the 2021 report, Volume 2, Chapter 39, Standing Committee on the Crown and Central Agencies.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee members. This afternoon, I am joined by Mrs. Kim Lowe. She's an audit principal in our office, and she is the office's liaison with the clerk of this committee. The first item on the agenda is Chapter 39 from our 2021 report, Volume 2, which describes the work of this committee. The chapter summarizes the committee's work from October 2020 to September 2021. Overall, at September 2021, the committee was up to date in reviewing chapters from our reports on CIC and its subsidiaries, and the implementation of the committee's recommendations by CIC subsidiaries remained fairly strong. I'll now turn it over to Kim, who will provide a brief overview of the chapter for the committee.
Thank you. The chapter before you this afternoon does not contain any recommendations. Rather, it provides your committee with an overview of the overall status of the committee's recommendations resulting from our office's work, the status of its consideration of our work, and the status of the committee's review of annual reports of CIC and its subsidiary corporations. In your review of our work and recommendations, your committee makes recommendations. Your committee includes its recommendations in its reports to the Assembly. Our office assesses the government's compliance with its recommendations and reports on their status. We report the results of these assessments in either specific chapters or, if not discussed elsewhere in the report, in a table in the Crown and Central Agencies chapter. As set out in Chapter 39 of our 2021 report, Volume 2, as of September 30th, 2021, the government implemented 70% of the recommendations included in the committee's reports. As well, by this date, the government partially implemented 33% of the remaining recommendations. At September 30th, 2021, the committee was up to date in its review of our chapters. In addition, the committee is responsible for examining annual reports of CIC and its subsidiary corporations. At September 30th, 2021, the committee was also up to date in its review of annual reports. Our office encourages the committee to continue to review the relevant chapters in our reports and the annual reports of CIC and its subsidiaries in a timely way. In that review of these documents contributes to the committee fulfilling its important role. That is, holding the government accountable in its management of CIC and its subsidiary corporations. That concludes my overview.
Thank you, Ms. Lowe. Do any members have any questions? Mr.
Just a quick question about the frequency of meetings. Noted here we had 8 times last year, 7 in the period before. Are we finding that the committee is getting through work at a reasonable rate? Are there needs for more meetings, less?
Yeah, so I guess at the end of the day, as indicated in the chapter, by September, the committee was up to date in its review of the chapters in our reports, was up to date in terms of the annual reports as well of all the CIC subsidiaries and CIC. So obviously 8 or 7 times seems to be a number that is keeping you up to date. I guess from our expectation, it's almost like an annual report should be reviewed probably within a year following sort of the end of that year end. So again, with March 31st year ends, probably meeting in the fall of that following year to review annual reports makes sense, like the committee's doing right now. So the schedule that seems to be occurring is definitely working from a timely review perspective.
And I'm just looking at that partially implemented. Are there any further steps that will be taken to have those fully implemented? In they're on schedule, or? Yeah,
so often if you look at sort of figure 4, it outlines what would have been outstanding and what wasn't implemented at the time of, so again, a certain point in time. What we do find is we undertake a follow-up audit after we've performed those performance audits in about a 2 to 3 year time frame. There is certain instances where we make recommendations and we do anticipate they are fairly complex and it may take the government up to sort of 5 years to implement them. In terms of what you see outstanding in terms of figure 4 there, SGI had one that has since been implemented and was publicly reported in 2022. So it's sometimes a timing thing. SAS Water, we haven't since followed up, and it's because they plan to implement a new purchasing IT system. I think it makes sense. We are going in basically beginning of 23. Well, we obviously want to see that implemented. We envision that that'll address those recommendations. And SAS Power, it was a timing. We hadn't done our follow-up. We since have, and 5 out of those 7 recommendations have been implemented. So we are pleased in terms of we do find the CIC subsidiaries do, take our recommendations seriously and do attempt to action them in a timely manner.
Seeing no more questions, the Provincial Auditor's 2021 Report, Volume 2, Chapter 39, Standing Committee on Crown and Central Agency has no recommendations for the committee to consider. I'll ask a member to move that we conclude consideration for this chapter. Mr. Steele has moved. Is that agreed? Agreed. Carried. And yeah, we'll just take a brief moment here for the SAS gaming officials to get themselves in here. We're in line. I guess they're already here, but just line them up.
Yes, exactly.
As quick as pulling a roulette wheel. Anyway, and welcome to the officials from Saskatchewan Gaming Corporation. Before we begin, I'd like to table CCA 2329 Saskatchewan Gaming Corporation Status Update, dated November the 8th, 2022. I'd also like to take a moment to explain the process we will use for consideration of business today. First, I will ask the Provincial Auditor to provide her presentation on the Saskatchewan Gaming Corporation chapter under review. Then the Minister may introduce his officials and respond to the chapter before we move on to questions and answers. At the conclusion of our consideration of the chapter, I'll excuse the Auditor and move on to consideration of the annual reports. Are there any questions? Seeing none, I will turn it over to Mrs. Clement to introduce any officials and make the presentation on the 2021 report, Volume 2, Chapter 17, Saskatchewan Gaming Corporation, Preventing Cyber Attacks. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Committee members and officials. With me today is Mrs. Charlene Drotar. So she's a principal in our office, and she was involved in the audit and the work that is before us today. She will be doing the presentation. Before I do turn it over to her, I do want to thank management and the staff at the Saskatchewan Gaming Corporation for the cooperation that was extended to us during the course of our work. I'll now turn it over to Charlene.
Thank you, Tara. So Chapter 17 of our 2021 Report Volume 2 provides the results of our audit of SAS Gaming's processes to prevent cyber attacks from affecting IT systems and data that it uses to support and deliver casino games. Effective cybersecurity programs to prevent cyber attacks are more important than ever as criminals continue to exploit the world's increasing dependence on IT systems. Cyber attacks can be carried out from anywhere in the world using the internet and do not require physical access to the business. Cybercrime costs Canadians about $3 billion in economic losses each year. SAS Gaming depends on many IT systems to operate its table games, slot machines, food and beverage services, show lounges, and related administrative and supportive functions. A breach or operational disruption of its IT systems could result in reputational damage or significant monetary costs and losses for SAS Gaming. This impacts profits available to support people, programs, and services in Saskatchewan. We concluded for the 12-month period ended July 31st, 2021, Saskatchewan Gaming Corporation had effective processes, except in certain areas, to prevent cyber attacks from affecting IT systems and data it uses to deliver and support casino games. We found SAS Gaming had some strong cybersecurity controls, but it could improve its processes in some areas. SAS Gaming tracks sufficient and up-to-date information about each of its IT assets, such as servers. Keeping this information helps promote timely maintenance and removal of unauthorized assets. It is difficult to protect what you don't know you have. We found SAS Gaming included some risks related to cybersecurity in its corporate-wide risk register, but it did not complete a sufficiently detailed risk analysis for all significant cybersecurity risks. It had an appropriate corporate risk framework that assessed risk at a corporate level. However, it did not apply this framework to complete an in-depth assessment to assess specific cybersecurity risks and set out well-defined action plans to reduce any significant gaps identified. It used some processes to help manage cybersecurity risks, such as weekly IT meetings, a list of action items, and some technical plans. However, these processes and plans did not clearly define all significant unmitigated cybersecurity risks, clearly link the risk to action plans expected to reduce those risks to acceptable levels, or include sufficient details about the scope of planned work. Without detailed assessments to identify all significant cybersecurity risks and clear alignment to current well-defined action plans to address those risks, SAS Gaming is at an increased risk from cyber attacks. This led to our first recommendation on page 134. We recommended Saskatchewan Gaming Corporation maintain well-defined action plans, clearly addressing all significant risks of cyber attacks that may affect IT systems and data used to support and deliver casino games. SAS Gaming had a number of controls in place to prevent unauthorized access to its systems and data, but some access controls were not sufficiently robust. SAS Gaming used network controls such as firewalls to restrict who could access its systems and data, especially to its gaming machines. Yet it did not sufficiently restrict access to limit movement in the network, as well as limit access on workstations to the minimum level that employees needed to carry out their jobs. Further, it did not use sufficient encryption to protect devices such as laptops and its backup copies of certain data. Without adequate configuration of its network, servers, and workstations, SAS Gaming increases its risk of unauthorized access to systems and data from cyber attacks. This resulted in our second recommendation on page 136. We recommended Saskatchewan Gaming Corporation adequately configure its network, servers, and workstations to better protect them from security threats and vulnerabilities. SAS Gaming followed established processes to grant and remove access to its systems and data, but needs to strengthen its password requirements and include all privileged user groups in its review of user access. We found SAS Gaming regularly reviewed employee access to systems and data remained appropriate over time. However, the reviews did not include a group of privileged users that was expected. This resulted in our third recommendation on page 137. We recommended Saskatchewan Gaming Corporation include all privileged user groups in its quarterly user access reviews. We found SAS Gaming used a password standard that was consistent with accepted practice by the IT industry, but it did not require the password to be changed as often as required by its policy for certain sensitive accounts. It also did not require for all remote access methods the use of multi-factor authentication, which is something that you know like a password, something you have like a texted code, and something you are like a fingerprint. Multi-factor authentication is a stronger authentication method to help reduce the risk of unauthorized access. Without sufficiently strong controls to manage who can access IT systems and data and how, SAS Gaming may have increased risk of unauthorized access to its systems and data. These findings led to our fourth and fifth recommendations, which are on page 137. We recommended Saskatchewan Gaming Corporation update all user account passwords as often as required by its password policy. In addition, we recommended Saskatchewan Gaming Corporation implement further use of multi-factor authentication to reduce to an acceptable level the risk of unauthorized access to its IT systems and data. SAS Gaming provided sufficient guidance and regular training to its employees about cybersecurity, and it periodically tested their understanding. It maintained appropriate IT security policies on its intranet. We found SAS Gaming used various processes to assess its IT security effectiveness, but needs to better analyze security information to support improved risk assessment. It also needs to update its security assessment plans to reflect current practice and IT industry standards, which will improve the quality of the information available to analyze. SAS Gaming used a number of security monitoring processes, such as routine vulnerability assessments and penetration testing. We found it did not always follow the expected frequency for these processes, sometimes running the monitoring processes more often and other times less often than indicated by its plans. In some cases, such as penetration testing, it had not documented the frequency of the processes or the rationale for that frequency. This led to our 6th recommendation on page 140. We recommended Saskatchewan Gaming Corporation update its IT security assessment plan to reflect changes in its practice and to align with IT industry standards. SAS Gaming used a third-party service provider to help monitor security alerts and logs. We found SAS Gaming tracked and remediated issues, but needs to receive these issues quickly. In addition, SAS Gaming did not holistically analyze data from its various security monitoring processes to help it better identify and assess cybersecurity threats and risks. Without robust security assessments about the effectiveness of implemented IT security controls, SAS Gaming increases the risk that it will not timely and adequately address new and evolving cybersecurity threats and vulnerabilities. This led to our 7th recommendation on page 140. We recommended Saskatchewan Gaming Corporation analyze information from security assessments and attempted cyber attacks to better identify and address cybersecurity risks. Finally, we found SAS Gaming use weekly meetings and quarterly risk updates to report to management and its board about cybersecurity. Regular reporting on cybersecurity risks helps with allocating resources to manage these risks and monitoring the effectiveness of related risk strategies. This concludes my overview of this chapter.
Well, thank you. Minister Morgan, could you please introduce your officials, make your opening comments? I wanted to also let the officials know that when you're going to speak, could you please state your name the first time you speak for Hansard?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to ask one of the officials in a few moments to make a comment regarding the comments made by the official auditor, sort of give the update as to the progress they're making at addressing the concerns that are raised, and want to thank the auditor for the work that they do in keeping the finances and the operations in our province safe and secure. On my left is Susan Flett, President and CEO. On my right is Cam Lear, Vice President of Finance and Risk. Behind us today is Steve Tunison, Senior Vice President of Marketing and Communications. Blaine Polatsky, Vice President of Corporate Services. Rick Finney, Director of Corporate Systems and Technology. Shanna Schulhauser, Director of Communications. My Chief of Staff, Charles Reed, and one of my ministerial assistants who may be here or may have gone back to the office, Michael Amann. The last time SAS Gaming appeared before the committee was in April. Since that time, there have been numerous developments in the area of gaming in our province. Last week on November 3rd, SAS Gaming alongside SIGA launched PlayNow.com, the province's first legal, regulated online gaming platform. The launch of this platform ushers in a new era of safe, secure online gaming, sports betting, and entertainment in Saskatchewan. The site is managed by SAS Gaming, operated by SIGA, regulated by SLGA, and utilizes the British Columbia Lottery Corporation's industry-leading PlayNow.com platform, which also successfully operates in BC and Manitoba. The site features 500 casino games and a full suite of sports betting options, with live dealer games expected to be added in December and poker to be added in 2023. It also features the Game Sense Responsible Gambling Program. This program supports a robust and controlled responsible gambling environment with features such as pop-up reminders of time and money spent, problem gambling referral information, play breaks, and self-exclusions. Game Sense advisors are also available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week via live chat to support safer play online. Mr. Chair, Play Now generates profits in Saskatchewan that that support Saskatchewan. It also demonstrates economic reconciliation in action. When we signed the historic agreement to establish this online gaming platform with SIGA, Chief Bobby Cameron called it reconciliation at its finest. A little over 13 months later, we now have an online product that is live in the Saskatchewan marketplace and helping to evolve our gaming industry. A product that meets the highest standards for safety, security, privacy, and responsible gambling, and will provide a legal, regulated alternative to gray market and illegal gambling sites currently operating in the province. Mr. Chair, PlayNow.com is a major achievement and one that should not be understated. I want to extend my appreciation to SAS Gaming and our First Nations partners, particularly FSIN Chief Bobby Cameron, SIGA President and CEO Zane Hansen, and SIGA Board Chair Reginald Belrose for their leadership in making this project a reality. Switching gears just slightly, I want to raise the recent changes that were announced to the structures of lottery and gaming in the province. On October 27th, the government announced the creation of a new Crown corporation, Lotteries and Gaming Saskatchewan, or LGS. LGS will consolidate the management oversight for casinos, VLTs, lotteries, and online gamings, with SAS Gaming being reconfigured as a wholly owned subsidiary of LGS. SAS Gaming will continue to operate casinos in Regina and Moose Jaw, and no jobs will be lost as a result of this change. It is business as usual at SAS Gaming. Establishing LGS allows for an industry-wide perspective to gaming policy and management while separating regulatory functions from management functions. This further aligns the Government of Saskatchewan with best practices in the gaming industry and ensures SLGA operates as an independent regulator of lotteries and gaming. Mr. Chair, I want to highlight some of the other work SAS Gaming has done around reconciliation and collaboration with First Nations and Métis people in Saskatchewan. Casino Regina is now the first provincial Crown building to have held a formal installation ceremony for the Treaty 4 and Métis Nation flags, with a similar ceremony to be held at Casino Moose Jaw at a later date. Ensuring these flags are lasting fixtures at Casino Regina aligns with the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's calls to action. It supports Saskatchewan Growth Plan initiatives relating to Indigenous engagement and participation in the labor force. It reflects SAS Gaming's dedication to Indigenous employment, wellness, learning, engagement, procurement, and community investment opportunities. And it demonstrates the corporation's commitment to reconciliation while making a resounding statement that everyone is welcomed and supported there. This is especially notable considering the corporation has the highest rate of Indigenous employment in the Crown sector at approximately 40%. This is a measure that SAS Gaming continues to place every effort on increasing, with the Gaming Framework Agreement's 50% Indigenous employment rate firmly in sight. Mr. Chair, I want to briefly touch on SAS Gaming's financial results from 2021-22, the status of its renovations, and the work that they've completed relating to cybersecurity. Although casinos Regina and Moose Jaw were temporarily closed for most of the first quarter of 2021-22, it marked a return to more normalized operations and a significant improvement in SAS Gaming's financial position. Similar to 2020-21, the corporation did not make a dividend payment to CIC in the last reporting year. This was due to the pandemic and temporary closures of its casino properties. The corporation did, however, report net income of $19.1 million for the year ended March 31st, 2022, and contributed $9.6 million to the General Revenue Fund to support the First Nations Trust, Community Initiatives Fund, and Clarence Campo Development Fund. Part of SAS Gaming's mandate is to give back to the communities in which it operates. Through its community giving program, the corporation has invested nearly $221,000 in organizations, projects, and events in 2021-22. Of that amount, 41% of those dollars went toward assisting Indigenous people in programs. After 24 months of uncertainty due to the pandemic, it was encouraging to see the corporation bounce back in such a significant way. It has also been encouraging to see the many changes that have been made to Casino Regina since January 2020. In order to remain competitive and stay on the cutting edge of casino gaming, SAS Gaming has been renovating Casino Regina. The property refresh has included sweeping upgrades to the interior of the casino and will end with some aesthetic changes to the show lounge. To date, approximately 85% of Casino Regina has been refreshed, with all renovations to be completed by the end of March. Following that, renovations will begin at Casino Moose Jaw. Finally, Mr. Chair, I want to discuss cybersecurity. This is an area of particular interest for all government and one that SAS Gaming continues to make positive headway. The corporation has developed action plans to mitigate and address the recommendations made by the Provincial Auditor of Saskatchewan in her 2021 Volume 2 report. As part of its action plan, SAS Gaming has also been improving its corporate IT policies and systems and internal resources to augment its approach to cybersecurity. All reasonable efforts are being made to complete the majority of the work relating to these action plans in 2022-23, with any remaining work to be completed in 2023-24. Mr. Chair, with that, I will conclude my opening remarks. I welcome questions from members of the committee, but before that, I will ask Ms. Gleer to respond briefly to the report made by the provincial auditor.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to, I'm happy to report that of the 7 recommendations, 5 are fully completed and 2 are partially completed. We've put this as top priority for the corporation. We have the appropriate resources in place, both internally and externally, and we look to complete the remaining 2 recommendations that are partially complete either by the end of the 4th quarter or in the 1st quarter of 23-24. Thank you.
With that, Mr. Chair, I don't know if the auditor's staff would like to make a further comment or if that's a satisfactory interim response.
Yeah, it's, it's positive from our perspective. I guess just for the committee members, just insight. What we do is we report back to this committee on a periodic basis. So we do follow up and obviously go, management has indicated good progress. We go and provide you and do an audit to figure out whether what's been represented is accurate and true. In terms of that work, we do plan to start and go look at the progress that has been indicated by Gaming Corporation in the summer of 2023. So our report will come back to this committee in terms of these 7 recommendations and outline the progress that has been made. And I am hopeful to some degree the next time we look, all 7 recommendations will be addressed at that time.
Well, thank you for that. Are there any questions? Mr. Tweed?
Yes, I just had a few questions first. Thank you so much for your reports, and thanks so much to the folks from SAS Gaming coming out and sharing that with us. There's a lot of discussion about cybersecurity. We certainly live in a world where we're all interconnected. I'm wondering what kind of sensitive data that SAS Gaming is currently holding for folks. I imagine now that we have an announcement of a new online platform that there might be a number of sensitive credit card information, personal information being held.
E-gaming is operated by SIGA, and I don't believe we would have any of that data at this particular Crown, but there certainly is through the operation of the 2 casinos. The player's card information would contain customer data on it, and the data involving how the various machines and gaming devices work is certainly on and would be of some significant benefit if it was either hacked or manipulated. So given the amount of dollars that flow through, it has to be an issue of ongoing concern. I don't know whether either.
Susan Flett. The minister is absolutely correct, and maybe I could just add a few comments with respect to BCLC, who is the provider of the Play Now platform. So with respect to cybersecurity, we know that they provide regular audits covering the platform, as well as continuing monitoring of its controls. They also have significantly large cybersecurity division housed at BC, and we know that they perform regular testing and scanning. Compared to some of the other online platforms, BC's controls and remediation approaches are, very well established, and you can consider them in a mature state. They use real-time detection controls, and our own provincial regulator, the SLGA, they have developed something called Internet Gaming System Standards, or IGAMS. And both SAS Gaming and our partner SIGA had an opportunity to take a look at this, and we have determined that Play Now not only meets, but it certainly exceeds the recommendations or any of the standards that are in place currently. So there should be a significant level of comfort in the cybersecurity controls that are in place.
And do you provide that support to SIGA then? If it's kind of are they a little arm's length, or is support being given to SIGA to build a cybersecurity strategy on their end? I'm thinking if it's being operated by a different entity, do we assist in that, or?
I don't think I would be fair to say that assistance is given. I think all of the is the BC operator, SIGA, and SAS Gaming Corporation all have to have good and adequate cybersecurity. I know there's probably consultation on an ongoing basis with them, but I wouldn't say it's a situation of one offering direction or controller assuming responsibility for the other. They would maintain their own. SIGA's been a good partner, a strong, mature partner, and we would be glad to share information one way or the other to make sure that both of them are able to maintain the highest levels of security.
So much. I have one question, just with the outstanding items. Is there any kind of reasonable assurance you can provide about that outstanding work here, and when will it be implemented, and any timelines you might have?
Thank you very much for that question. So we do have 2 recommendations that are partially complete. We are working on them currently. We are hoping to have them done by fourth quarter, year-end, March 31st, 2023. And if there are any, they're technical in nature. If there's any carryover, it would just be into the first quarter. So we are working on them currently and do plan to have them complete.
Yeah, no, it's interesting to hear about cybersecurity, because we had a CBC article this morning talking about a takedown of an infamous ransomware attacker. So obviously there's some sensitivity around putting cybersecurity strategies on the public record. That being said, does SGC and the auditor follow this type of thing? Have we been implicated by this hacker, or have there been any similar attempts?
I think it'd be fair to say that every aspect of government is under continuous siege. They do penetration checks periodically, and there is continuous attempted hacks almost on a daily basis at one problem in the government. I know they've gone around and they're part of the process is they check for frequently used passwords or recurring passwords on Wi-Fi and various other aspects of it. So I think the advice that we've been given is not to give particulars of the things that are being watched or monitored, because I think that's how one of the earlier hacks started. But I think it would be fair to say that for SAS Gaming Corporation and all aspects of government, cybersecurity is and should be one of the highest priorities. It's not cheap, but it's something that's absolutely essential. The cost of a hack or a breach or denial of is something that we have to take every step to minimize or to avoid.
Last just question is, there was a mention of this new Crown Corporation. Is there a timeline on when the new Crown Corporation will be actualized? Timelines on that process?
I've got 2 years, and I've got the same answer going into both of them. April 1st, 2023. It's an alignment and a separation of the operational side and the regulatory side, which is done in virtually every province across Canada. So this is bringing our province into line with what's taking place in other jurisdictions, and I'm pleased that it's happening. And at the present time, it's a work in progress, but that's the target date. I'm told that ultimately no jobs will be lost, but people will be moved around. There'll be realignment of positions. So I've got enormous confidence in the workforce that's in that area, that they will be able to adapt and probably look forward to making the changes that this will occasion. So.
Yeah, just as critic to this portfolio, I've certainly been getting some feedback around this transition, and it's nice to hear those timelines and assurances on jobs, and I think that's everything for me at this moment.
Well, thank you. Any more questions from the committee? This Chapter 7 had new recommendations. With respect to Recommendation 1, what is the committee's wish? I recognize Mr. Steele.
Mr. Chair, I move that the committee concur with the recommendations and concur with the recommendations and noted progress towards compliance, concur with recommendations and note the compliance, disagree with the recommendations, or adopt the independent recommendations. What's this? You just handed me that. Concur.
You just need to. No.
Oh, concur. Okay, just, you want to go there? Okay, Fred. Yeah. Okay, concur and note compliance. Is that where we're at? Okay.
Okay. Mr. Steele has moved the committee concur with the recommendation and note compliance with the recommendation. With respect to recommendation number 2, what is the committee's wish? I recognize Mr. Steele.
I concur and note progress. Right?
That's okay. Does the committee agree? Sorry about that. I didn't ask that on the first one, did I? Sorry about that. Okay, on the first one, does the committee agree with the first one also? Okay, let's get this all straight here. With respect to recommendation number 3, what is the committee's wish? I recognize Mr. Steele.
Concur and apply? Comply? Where are we at?
So Mr. Steele has moved the committee concur and note compliance with the recommendation. Does the committee agree?
Agree.
With respect to recommendation number 4, what is the committee's wish? I recognize Mr. Steele.
Concur and note compliance?
Mr. Steele has moved that the committee concur and note compliance with the recommendation. Does the committee agree?
Agree.
With respect to recommendation number 5, what is the committee's wish? I recognize Mr. Steele.
We concur and note progress?
Mr. Steele has moved that the committee concur and note progress towards compliance. Does the committee agree with that recommendation?
Agree.
The committee agrees. With respect to recommendation number 6, what is the committee's wish? I recognize Mr. Steele.
I concur and note compliance?
Mr. Steele has moved that the committee concur with the recommendation and note compliance with the recommendation. Is the committee in agreement?
Agree.
The committee agrees. With respect to recommendation 7, what is the committee's wish? I recognize Mr. Steele.
Concur and note compliance?
Mr. Steele has moved that the committee concur and note compliance with the recommendation. Is the committee in agreement?
Agree.
The committee agrees. This concludes our business with the provincial auditor. Thank you very much for your attendance today, and appreciate you coming down here on short notice. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Okay. We will now move on to the consideration of 2021-22 Saskatchewan Gaming Corporation Annual Report and the SGC Holdings Incorporated financial statements for the year ending March 31st, 2022. Mr. Morgan, please make any comments that you have on these reports.
Chair, I made opening comments before the auditor started and have nothing further to add at this time. And we have the officials present and would be prepared to answer whatever questions the members may have.
Well, thank you, Minister. Are there any questions? Mr. Tweed?
No, none at this time.
Okay, seeing none, I will now ask a member to move that we conclude consideration of 2021-22 Saskatchewan Gaming Corporation Annual Report and the SGC Holdings Incorporated financial statements for the year ending March 31st, 2022. Mr. Lawrence has moved that we conclude consideration. Is that agreed? Agreed. Carried. This concludes our business with Saskatchewan Gaming Corporation. Minister, do you have any final comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to thank you and the committee members, particularly the members from the government side, and for their very vigorous coaching as we went through. I always thank them for that. And Mr. Speaker, I thank the new member opposite and want to thank him for his participation today and welcome seeing him as we go further. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chair, I want to use this as the opportunity to thank a variety of different people, and I'll be very brief on it. The Ledge Assembly staff, Hansard, this building security, Steve Batten, the building staff, broadcast services, and everybody that works in this building. And then with today's proceedings, would like to thank the staff from Sask Gaming Corporation that are here today and thank them for the work they do, not just in preparing for today, but throughout the year and for the contributions and financial input that comes from that entity where we are well served. I would use this opportunity as well to thank the workers for all of our Crown corporations and the government sectors for keeping our communities strong, safe, and secure, and making Saskatchewan the best place to live and work.
Well, thank you very much for that, Minister. And do you have any closing comments, Mr. Tweed?
No, just thank you so much to Sask Gaming for coming out and presenting annual reports. I promise I'll have more questions next time. It was a very interesting report, and I'm excited to see the developments that are happening with the new app and the partnerships with SIGA, and excited to hear that we will be continuing to employ many folks in our province, and that those funds will go to support the province. So,
well, thank you. This concludes our business with the Saskatchewan Gaming Corporation. So we will now switch out to, and we'll just take a little bit of a recess here to switch out to our Saskatchewan Water Corporation. So we'll take a, are they here? Do you know? We're just going to check and see if they're here. We're just going to take a quick recess.